Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the William Steinberg Complete Command Classics recordings on Deutsche Grammophon, 17 CDs. There weren't a ton of them, and they're important recordings for a lot of reasons, but I have to register a couple issues with this box, the way it's presented. First of all, there is one track missing. I don't know why it's missing. I don't know what they did in order to tell you which it is. I can tell you what it is. It's Adeste Fidelis, actually. O Come All Ye Faithful, on this sort of like miscellaneous stuff album. I managed to open this. It opens, by the way, from the front. It's always like a challenge, isn't it? Figuring out how they're going to do this. You know, you try and do it this way, nothing happens. You do this. Well, this one opens like that. It's like a clam. All right, and on this disc, let's see which disc it is. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Oh, my word. Life is so complicated. I really think, they make these things so difficult. All they have to do is include what they say is supposed to be in here. There it is. I think it's like the last disc. Is it 17? 16. Disc 16. Yes, O Come All Ye Faithful. There's an arrangement of that on track 20. Track 20. There you go. Well, there is no track 20, so now you know. The other issue is sonic. Now, these Command Classics recordings were made on 33 or 35 millimeter tape, or there's a whole thing about film, not tape, film, and the engineer was Robert Fine, of Mercury Living Presence fame. I believe it was. And let's see, who's it? Oh, yes, recording engineer, C. Robert Fine. There he is. And these recordings do not sound anything like as brilliant as the Mercury Living Presence recordings, particularly on top. And I think it has something to do with the remastering, because my memory of the LPs was of a sound that was quite a bit more open and vivid in the upper frequencies. I could be wrong. My memory could be playing me false. But listening to these, I missed that. And I think it's a function of the mastering. I'm not sure what they did. So I find all of these performances a little bit on the dull side. If you crank them up, you do get this very fine presence of an orchestra in a room. There's a naturalness to the recordings at the same time, but they are a little bit disappointing. So now let's talk about the performances themselves and William Steinberg. Steinberg had the best pedigree you could imagine. Really, he did. I mean, he was a protege of Otto Klemperer and then the assistant at NBC to Arturo Toscanini, who promoted his career vociferously. I mean, he couldn't have been better. He was a musician of the type, well, he was like Erich Kleiber. He was like Edward von Beinum. He was not one of those demonstrative crazy types. He was an intensely musical, self-effacing artist. So you weren't so conscious of the fact that, that's Steinberg. He made his points through felicities of balance, of textural awareness, flow, phrasing. I hate that word because, what's a phrasing? But he really understood how to put a piece together, and very few dead spots ever. I mean, there are no bad performances in here. Let's put it that way, except for maybe the Ravel Valse Noble et Sentimentale, which sounds a little stiff and strange. But basically, all the performances are quite good, and we can stipulate to that and then talk about them in a little bit more detail. He really was marvelous, and he should actually have an EMI, a Warner box, totally remastered, because those Capitol records also had iffy sound. They were from mostly the 50s, but that's where most of his repertoire is. It was on Capitol, now EMI, now Warner. And they did issue a big box of Steinberg stuff, sort of transferred as is. He needs careful remastering and a real edition, because as we all know, he was a great conductor. I mean, he was the successor to Erich Leinsdorf in Boston, but he only lived for 3 years in that position, unfortunately. It was the end of his life. He was already ill, and so he wasn't able to do much. And his one Boston recording, Bruckner 6th, and I think there's a Schubert 9th or something else. The RCA is issuing the Steinberg stuff. They're issuing that with the Arthur Fiedler New World Symphony, because that was Arthur Fiedler's only big symphony record, and they're putting it like in a 3 or 4 disc set. So that's coming soon. I'm telling you now, you heard it here first, and we can enjoy those recordings when they come out as well. His Boston Legacy. You gotta love him. I mean, the recordings he made for Deutsche Grammophon in Boston, those the Planets, the Hindemith disc, and also Sprach Zarathustra, that was it, are all classics. I mean, that's how good he was. He was phenomenally fine as a conductor. And so I'm happy to have this. I wish it could have been remastered differently or more carefully. Now, the Pittsburgh Symphony, too. Let's not forget, Pittsburgh Symphony is always the overlooked great American symphony. Not only do they currently sound as great as any orchestra in the universe, and they have the best horn section in the world, but they've always been that good. Always. I mean, when Steinberg took over in Pittsburgh, his predecessor was Fritz Reiner, who went to Chicago. So we know how good they are. And Pittsburgh is one of those towns because it's an industrial town. It's a steel town. And it's between Cleveland and Philadelphia, both of which had big 5 orchestras. I mean, why Pittsburgh never was ranked as highly as those orchestras, I don't know, because they always deserved it. And Pittsburgh is an intensely musical town. It has Carnegie Mellon University. It has a tremendous amount of arts activity and subsidy. I mean, Earl Wild came from Pittsburgh. Lots of people came from Pittsburgh. When Mildred Miller, the great alto soloist in Bruno Walter's best recording of Das Lied von der Erde, retired, she went to Carnegie Mellon and spent the rest of her life there teaching. It's a splendid place, Pittsburgh. It really is. So, for those of you who don't know what the deal is with American orchestras, I mean, Pittsburgh is as great as anything out there. And they've always been sort of overlooked because of Philadelphia at the other end of the state, probably. But it's not right. It's not right. And so you're going to get very good playing. I find, generally speaking, in these recordings, an absence of bass, a sort of soggy timpani that you don't always hear. There are some peculiarities that I think may have to do with the acoustic of the room, but the performances themselves are really, really pretty much first class. And let's just talk about them. Some of them we've already discussed and we know about. There's the Beethoven cycle. The Beethoven cycle, and with the Leonora Overture No. 3, is very good, especially for its period. These are all early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, somewhere in there. I think, let's see, what does it say here about the dates? Oh, my goodness, recorded 1962. All right, somewhere in there. Yeah, around 1962 through 1965. 66, it even goes as late as. I mean, Steinberg was a splendid Beethoven conductor. The performances are effortless and intelligent and idiomatic. The Eroica is quite exciting. I mean, they're really fine performances all the way through. And I mean, the 5th goes really well. The Pastoral Symphony was the one that turned me on to classical music. I don't know if it was this one. I think there was a Capital one, an earlier one, the one with the Bruegel on the cover. One of you guys told me what it was, but it was Steinberg in Pittsburgh. He always did a splendid job with the Pastoral Symphony, knew exactly how it should go. He's pretty generous with exposition repeats. I mean, this is a very, very fine Beethoven cycle. Nowadays, there are so many fine Beethoven cycles. What are you going to say? But if you appreciate that kind of effortless musicality that Steinberg was really a master of, then you're going to enjoy his Beethoven cycle. It's the same is true of his Brahms cycle with the Tragic Overture. I mean, the Brahms cycle, if anything, is even a little better than the Beethoven's. He doesn't mess up the 3rd. I mean, he doesn't wreck it. I mean, it's really kind of cool. I'm very, very happy about that. The tempi are always wonderful. I mean, you hear the woodwind parts. You hear it's delightful. So I don't want to spend more time over it because we don't need to cover territory that we've covered before. And like I said, you're not going to go wrong as far as the performances are concerned. So if you like historical recordings and you want to know what was happening at this period in the late 50s and early 60s, these are a good bet. They were fully competitive with the best when they were issued originally. They really were. Then we've got a Bruckner 7. Well, this is very interesting. This was recorded in 1963. or so it appears. Yes, 1963. And boy, there wasn't a lot of Bruckner 7s in the United States in 1963. I find that interesting. There weren't a lot of Bruckner 7s anywhere in 1963. That makes it even more interesting. It's a beautiful performance. It hits all the right notes. And not only do you get the Seventh Symphony, but you get the overture in G minor, the early Bruckner overture in G minor, which is unheard of. I mean, Steinberg had this very Catholic taste in repertoire, and the Wagner Faust overture, which is also something of a rarity. Then we've got a Copland disc. We've got Billy the Kid, Appalachian Spring, and then Gershwin's An American in Paris. Totally idiomatic, healthy, rhythmically, nicely springy performances. They're just lovely. A disc of suites, Porgy and Bess Symphonic Picture, My Fair Lady, and The Sound of Music, all Robert Russell Bennett arrangements. I love these things. These are so much fun. The tunes are wonderful. The performances are delicious. What's not to love? Rachmaninoff 2 is on CD 12. It's the traditional cut version. There are millions of traditional cut versions. I'm not sure that anybody's going to need this Rachmaninoff 2, but you should know about it. It's not bad. It's not bad, but it's a little bit, if you want to get the traditional cut version, you get Ormandy in Philadelphia. And another sleeper was Alfred Wallenstein with the Los Angeles Philharmonic. That was really good, too. Anyway, Franz Schubert, Eighth Symphony and Symphony number 3. The Unfinished is given a very flowing, very classically oriented performance. Very different from the sort of gloom and doom type that was typical of the period. Really was. So this must have come as something somewhat surprising back in the day, and it still sounds quite refreshing. Then we've got Petrushka. Oh, yes, Petrushka. Play this, then listen to Klaus Mekela's horrible version recently, and you get a sense of just how good Steinberg was, with all kinds of music, coupled to Shostakovich's first. Weirdly tracked, I must say. The track listing here is really strange. The Largo, the slow movement, is listed as 13 minutes long, and the finale is 3 minutes long. What happens is that the track for the finale only begins after that big climax with the timpani solo, bum, ba-da-da, ba-bum, which sounds terribly out of tune, I must say, in this performance. It's not one of my favorite Shostakovich firsts. It's really not. There's something is a little odd there. But anyway, that's not where the finale begins. The finale begins, about 5 or 6 minutes back. Ridiculous. Tchaikovsky Fourth. A beautiful Tchaikovsky Fourth. I really like this Tchaikovsky Fourth. I also like the somewhat measured tempo in the finale. It's not slow, but it's what's the word for it? Well, I said measured. It makes it sound somewhat stiff and stodgy. It's not. It has a sort of relaxed joy to it that's very, very appealing. A lot of times, God knows I love Mravinsky. I like a finale that's as frenetic as hell and disciplined, and insanely disciplined, like Muti as well as like that. But there's something to be said for one that has a certain joviality and Gemütlichkeit almost. It's not something you think about when you think about Tchaikovsky, and maybe not this finale because you want to whip it up. But it's really a lovely performance to listen to. It falls so gracefully on the ear. A very good Nutcracker suite. And then we've got a string orchestra version by Steinberg of Verdi's String Quartet. Now, that's a rarity. It's been done that way before. Andre Previn recorded it for Deutsche Grammophon, I think with a Vienna Phil, in a string orchestra version as well. There have been a few others since then, but it sounds lovely. It's a wonderful work, a delightful, witty work. Late Verdi, and it's fun to hear. Berlioz's Hungarian March, Dvorak, a great scherzo capriccioso. It's exactly the right timing, 12 minutes and 15 seconds. Much longer than that, and the piece kind of dies. Steinberg knew better. Then we've got, a little Bizet thing from Jeux d'Enfants, and two things from Jeux d'Enfants, and the Saint-Saëns Marche Militaire Français from the Suite Algérienne, and then the Ravel, which I think sounds strange, the Valse Noble, Strauss Perpetuum Mobile, the Tritsch-Tratsch Polka, and then Adeste Fidelis, which is not there. Last but not least, Wagner. Steinberg was a terrific Wagner guy. You've got the Meistersinger Prelude. It's a nice, weighty, juicy prelude, but it's not slow, but it has trenchancy, Yes, it belongs in a trench. It's trenchancy. And the Lohengrin Act 3 Prelude, which is noisy and vulgar, which it always is. And let's see, the Flying Dutchman Overture. I like this a lot too. Again, not too fast. And you really hear the harmony and the inner parts. It's really kind of cool. I mean, you might want to have like louder horns as a function of the balance, but boy, is it really good. Then Rienzi, Ride of the Valkyries, Magic Fire Music, The Entry of the Gods into Valhalla, Twilight of the Dawn, and Siegfried's Rheinfahrt, as they call it in the biz, his Rhine journey, and Siegfried's Funeral March, which is how it ends. It's really good Wagner stuff, fun to listen to. It's so intelligently shaped and structured, always with Steinberg. So the performances, as I said, are well worth hearing. But I'm just puzzled by the sonics, I have to confess. And they do provide a barrier to me, and they may well to you as well. So sample, see what you think. And if you bought the Beethoven cycle already, which was issued separately, the Brahms cycle, which was issued separately, do you need this box all over again for all the rest of the stuff? Well, that's up to you. That's up to you. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.